What is going on, everybody? Welcome into a special edition of the Daily Energy Newsbeat Stand-Up here on this gorgeous Friday, April 21st, 2023. As always, I'm your humble correspondent, Michael Tanner, coming to you from an undisclosed location here in Dallas, Texas. We have a great weekly recap lined up for you. It was an incredibly busy week. Stu and I are absolutely exhausted. Thank you for picking up the slack, Stu, for me last night. We will be back in full force Monday, bringing you all of the weekly news. We appreciate you guys sticking to us. I'm going to turn it over to the team now. Let's fire up the weekly segment. See you next week.
You and I are very partial to Colorado. I love Colorado. But now Colorado pushing to ban oil and gas permitting by 2030. This article came up out of the Cowboy. This came in from Cowboy State Daily out of Wyoming. They are a fantastic reporting newspaper. Please reach out and follow them. Let me read the byline. Colorado anti-fossil fuel groups are collecting signatures for a petition to ban all oil and gas permitting in the state. Supporters say that the measure will protect Colorado's environment, but opponents say it reflects ignorance of the value of oil and gas bring to the world. This is just nuts. And there's a publisher's note here. Let me read this to you, Michael. This is a perfect example of people fleeing California due to the high energy cost and then bringing their failed energy policies and voting practices with them to destroy states. Rather than work with people, they're like locusts destroying everything in their path. When you move to Texas, please leave your voting policies behind. Texas is already seeing this play out in Austin. Oh, I wonder who wrote that.
That seems like something you would write. Oh, wait, it's the publisher's note. Oh, wait.
That would be me. So now look, this is absolutely nuts, Michael. Your efforts and your software development helped oil and gas operators in Colorado go through the legislative requirements, which not all requirements or regulations are bad. A lot of regulations are good. Don't get me started on good versus bad regulations. But your efforts help get some of the biggest operators drilling permits when nobody could even understand what the rules are. Michael, what are your thoughts? You got some real experience in Colorado regulations.
Yeah, I think you've seen a shift in Colorado to a very onerous permitting process. As Stu mentioned, we got to firsthand work on a project like this, building really an application that helped oil and gas operators break down the SB 150 rule, which was different than what's going on right now. I don't know if it was SB 150. It was one of those SB something, maybe SB 149. But basically, the idea was, if you're going to permit on specific locations, you need to decide whether or not these attributes of the community around are hit. And if they're hit, you have to do a bunch of other things. And this application ruled everything up. And what really that law, not necessarily our application, but what that law forced operators to do is move into this, it's called comprehensive area plans, where instead of getting a permit for one well, because the permit process is so onerous for one well, you might as well permit an entire area at one time in order so that you can do some sort of field level planning. So what everybody in Colorado has shifted to is, they're called caps. You see these press releases from companies like, PDC or press releases from Civitas. And they said, what are they doing? We just got our CAP approved, or whatever the name of their CAP, CAP, comprehensive area plan. It's easier to get, 60 locations permitted up in one batch, because that process is so onerous, because you have to do it on one well. If it's the same as one well. So that's what you've already moved to in Colorado. What this law is going to move it one step forward. And basically it's going to be very tough to get a permit raised. I mean, what's already happening in Colorado is consolidation. You've got two major players there. Or three major players. You've got Civitas, you have PDC, you have Oxy. Something's going to happen with Civitas and PDC. something will happen at some points. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen in 6 months. They will combine. You will end up seeing Oxy exit Colorado. The question is it to that combined entity? Is it to one of the, is it to somebody else? I mean, I've heard the asking price for Oxy's Colorado assets. It's not cheap. I don't think PDC or Civitas could afford that. Now, could they afford that together with maybe another third party? I don't know. But point is, you're going to see consolidation. And I think in 10 years, Stu, what you're going to see is one dominant oil and gas operator in Colorado who's the only company that has an ability to actually get anything approved and permitted. You'll see, and that's where I think this law will lead us.
Oh, I think it's all into a disaster. And what happens is, Cal, we'll go through all that later, but let's all set the tone that you can only legislate stupid so much. And we'll go into the next one.
Yeah, I mean, I love that state, but it is unfortunate what's happening.
Yeah, you notice both of us are in Texas. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Notice the shit. We used to be undisclosed location in Denver.
Yeah,
now it's Dallas.
I'm in an undisclosed location here in Abilene, Texas. So, let's go to the administration backs new gas spending in G7 with caveats. And we're going to tie that also with the G7 talks here in just a second as well. So I got two of them on the G7. And the G7 is, they're the seven wealthiest countries in the world meeting in Japan. And since they're meeting in Hiroshima, maybe we could get Senator Kerry or Czar Kerry to glow when he gets done after being in. Maybe we can get him to go to Nagasaki as well.
Maybe.
We'll leave
just
that
give you guys
alone.
an idea. The G7 is Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the United Kingdom and the United States, as well as the EU. So I don't know what that means.
That would be all of Europe.
So why is it the G7? It's an informal grouping of the seven of the world's most advanced economies. So you're right. It's not just countries.
Right. So let's kind of like go in here. And so the biggest thing in here is the final outcome, which puts some big caveats on new investment in gas and deletes Japan's proposed language, which wouldn't have happened if the U.S. had opposed. Mm-hmm. They're really putting it. You and I talked about this 2 years ago, or, when we recognized that gas was going to be needed, or a year and a half ago. And the document says gas can be developed as long as it's acceptable within our climate goals. But science is very clear. No new investments in gas can be compatible with our climate goals. In other words, these chowderheads understand that they got to have gas and nuclear in order to get there. They're saying they need it. They're saying that they also need to spend the money, but now some of them are still saying we ain't spending the money.
Well, you pointed this out 2 years ago during COP26 and mentioned that there was rumblings of calling natural gas clean. And now that's turned out to be true. We saw that in COP27. That's going to be a huge part of COP28 coming up. And this falls right in line with it. You were unfortunately right about this. You can take the victory lap.
Yeah. Twice now. So that's the only 2 times that I've been right since we've been doing this. In the G7, when you take a look at the other article we have, Jennifer Granholm said in an interview Friday, we expect those countries that see this done and the nations that have the wherewithal to make these investments to be first out, give those hope to others to be able to do it, as that technology lowers the cost. I really wish they would get a crayon, because their numbers don't match up. As the technology lowers the cost, the technology is not there. The supply chain is costing more, just like in drilling oil wells. I don't want to use the word doubling, but it's almost doubled. And now you see
Yeah.
there is absolutely nothing cheaper about solar or wind. And they keep saying driving an EV is cheaper. I really wish we'd hand them a crayon for Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was going to point that out specifically in this second article titled G7 Energy Environmentals Haggle Over Climate Strategy. I mean, there's a bunch of gobbledygook, but exactly what you said in there. Senator Tamhope Crank came out and said, where's the actual quote here? Where is it here? It's I can't find it in here, but basically you're exactly right. It's Gramhol's like, yeah, we all know it's cheaper to have an EV car than a gasoline car. And I'm like, what?
No.
Not,
Yeah.
only when you're in power, only when you guys take power. When Trump
yeah.
was in charge, oil was $1.50. I mean, for better or worse, it's the deep, dark secret. Well, people in oil and gas should love Democratic leadership because they restrict oil and gas production by regulatories. Prices go up. What does Trump do? Turn on the taps? What do prices go? Go into the tank. I mean, if you graph Republican president, Democratic, or like presidents and their affiliation, and then overlay crude oil prices, it's insane. I've seen it done before, and there's a strong correlation between Democratic leadership and high oil and gas prices. It's hilarious.
Well, the Biden administration wants the higher oil prices to drive everybody to renewable energy.
Good point. That's a good point. That's a solid point.
This one is really kind of frightening here, Michael. We've been talking about the rise of the Petroyuan, the end of the petrodollars reign, and the impact of global markets. Michael, this one is really today's episode. I have to put down as one of our most important episodes because it really does not have it where you have three stories, separate people, separate around the world, separate locations, and they all have a different key impacting comments to this one bottom line: rise of the Petroyuan, end of the petrodollar. Okay, let's start with some of these quotes. Do you know that central banks bought more gold last year than any year in the past 55 years since 1967? Though most don't realize it, 1967 was a significant year due to the events at the London gold pool. 1967, the gold pool collapsed due to a shortage of gold. Here's where it really got bad. The point is, a large global gold flows can sign a paradigm shift in the international monetary system is imminent. In 2022, China has bought more gold than anybody else. According to the Financial Times, I'm down in that paragraph, Michael, right under it says the real reason for China's massive gold stash. According to the Financial Times, the buyers of gold in 2022 were China and Middle East oil producers. Not a coincidence. These countries will be at the center of the changes of the international monetary system. This is now happening. And today it is clear why China has an insatiable demand for gold. Beijing has been waiting for the right moment to pull the rug out beneath the US dollar, and now is that moment. The key to understanding it is President Xi's historic visit to Saudi Arabia and other Gulf GCC states to launch a new paradigm of all-dimensional energy cooperation. There's about three more quotes in here I'm going to read you, and then we're going to open it up for your thoughts. During Xi's visit, he made the following crucial remarks. China will continue to import large quantities of crude from GCC companies, the Middle East countries, expand imports of liquefied natural gas, strengthen cooperation, upstream oil and gas development, engineering services, storage, transportation, and refining, and make full use of the Shanghai Petroleum and Natural Gas Exchange as a platform to carry out yuan settlement of oil and gas trade. That's President Xi. Okay, let's go down to the next one here. Saudis, after Xi's historic visit, the finance minister, Saudi Arabia is open to discussions about trade in currency other than the US dollar, according to the kingdom's finance minister. Okay, let's come on down here. Even the Wall Street Journal admits such a move would be disastrous for the US dollar. The Saudis would chip away at the supremacy of the US dollar in the international financial system, which Washington has relied on for decades to print treasury bills it uses to finance its budget deficit. Ron Paul says the end of the dollar homogeny, where he points out one thing that would precipitate the dollar's demise. This is Ron Paul. The economic law that honestly exchange demands of only real value as currency cannot be repealed. The chaos that one day will infuse from our experiment with worldwide fiat money will require a return to money of value. We know that that day is approaching when oil producing countries demand gold or its equivalent for all their oil rather than dollars or euros. Here's the bottom line. The end of the petrodollar system is imminent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to disagree with Ron Paul. I think he's fairly spot on here. It is. I think the scariest part is the fact of the U.S. of the idea of that we use the supremacy of the dollar because it's used to trade oil to help fund our global debts. Does this make that's the scary part of going to the petrodollars, that we have basically leveraged the fact that we will always be the world's reserve currency, and we're learning in real time that may not necessarily be true. So,
right.
We're in a pickle here.
We're in a big pickle, and the political powers that be of Republicans and Democrats have absolutely. Do you remember the Sean Connery movie Hunting for Red October?
Yes.
Okay.
The Hunt for Red October.
Go ahead and disable the torpedoes so that you can fire them closer. And then
it's the Russians.
The Russians, and then
the Soviets.
The torpedoes come back around, and he goes, "You fool, you've killed us." That's exactly what we're going to be saying to our politicians. You fool, you have killed the US dollar. What Russia's first gas pipeline to China reveals about a planned second one. Michael and I talked about this a while ago. I got word on this first one when the sanctions were first imposed on Russia. China and Russia at the beginning of the war started negotiating for the first pipeline, and they did go through Kazakhstan, I believe. Let me double check here. And the reason for that, Gazprom has long touted the first power of Siberia as highly profitable and successful project, while going great lengths not to disclose the actual parameters of the ongoing trade. In June 2014, when the project was launched, following the figures were made public, Russia would sell China 38 billion cubic meters of gas annually, totaling 1,000 BCM over a 30-year contract, with estimated sale price of 350 to 400 per 1,000 cubic meters. Pretty good stuff, but that has really changed. This article goes through the newer information and how the pipeline does visit in. I did visit with a executive from Gazprom probably 4 or 5 years ago at a investment conference, and it was amazing how little money Gazprom has to actually pay to bring natural gas to market. and you would be surprised. It is in the cents, not the dollars. So they can actually make, no wonder Russia is making so much money off of their energy. So when we take a look at the pipelines, these pipelines coming around are critical for the long-term dollar amounts and the long-term sustainability of Russia. Russia has moved away from sanctions. They don't have to deal with it. They are now working on not using the petrodollar, and they have everything on the road. So all these stories kind of blend in together. And I hope that all this makes a lot of fun and a lot of sense.
There you have it, folks. Stories of the week. We appreciate you made it. It's Friday. We appreciate you guys holding and hanging out with us. Have a great weekend. Email us questions at energynewsbeat.com. Otherwise, as I mentioned in the intro, we'll see you next week.